Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast, where smart strength training meets real life. We're Dr. Matt and Nicole, founders of Village Fitness and Physical Therapy. Here, you'll learn what really works in the gym, at home, and for life. All right, everybody. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Ben Tzeel. He is a registered dietitian. He's been living with type 1 diabetes for most of his life, and he helps folks to manage their diabetes, to prevent type 2 diabetes, to live life on their own terms by not having to constantly worry about their blood sugar, being able to eat the foods that they want to eat, and really succeed in life with diabetes. So Ben, super excited to have you on the Strength for Life pod today.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really, really excited because we get to combine nutrition and working out and, of course, blood sugars.
Cool. Well, tell us your story. When were you diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and what's that been like in terms of setting you up for the career that you now have?
So I was 7 when I was diagnosed. So it was way back in the day in 1999. And I didn't know any better, right? I was living my life. We had just moved to Wisconsin, woo. And my fam was like, oh, we're going to go to Six Flags for the first time. It'll be so fun. You're going to get to go on roller coasters. And I was really excited. And we walked into the gates, and within 10 minutes, my dad had gotten a phone call because he had noticed some behavior. He works in the health field that he thought may have aligned with type 1. And so I got my labs drawn at that point, and they gave the results 10 minutes into being at Six Flags. And my parents found out, hey, he's got type 1 diabetes. And so from that point, everything just kind of was a solemn day, and everything got flipped on its head. I kept getting told, hey, you can't have the birthday treat with your friends. Hey, you can't run around with your friends, and you're probably not going to play sports and get strong. And it really got annoying to hear the word no over and over and over and over again. So I started to take it upon myself, being someone who was interested in sports, wanted to get strong. How am I going to figure this out? And so I started asking a lot of questions, and I just didn't get answers. Like, I'd go to the dietitian at my clinic, and my favorite example of this was I told them, I'm a baseball player. I'm a pitcher. I want to get stronger. I want to eat better. What do I do? They handed me a meal plan. I swear this is legit accurate, for an offensive lineman. But I'm like, I am not an offensive lineman. I'm like 5'10", 165 pounds. This guy's, 6'3", 300 pounds. This probably isn't going to work. So no one could give me these answers. And so I started taking it upon myself. I fell in love with working out, went to college, and realized nutrition was the X factor for blood sugars as well as for strength and conditioning. So I started to dive more into that. Thought I wanted to get a PhD. So did everything but my dissertation, focusing on diabetes and nutrition. Realized I wanted to deal with people. So I flipped, became a dietitian, and then realized, hey, no one can answer these questions for me growing up. Why not become that person that fills that void? So people growing up with diabetes now, people living with it now, have a resource to go to, and the rest is history.
That's awesome.
That's super cool. When did you start your Instagram?
I started doing social media. It was my last year of grad school. Holy cow. 2017. One of my friends told me, he was probably on the earlier side for social media. He said, hey, once you graduate, you'll be very happy that you have a social media. So start posting now. Doesn't matter what it is. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. And I kind of just figured it out after some time.
When you emailed me like a month ago, your like little tagline in your email said you had like 30,000 Instagram followers, and I looked at your Instagram, you have like 80,000. So I'm guessing it's exploded recently.
In the last, I'm trying to think. Yeah, probably about the last year. Like, it started to just take off, and I don't know what happened, if the algorithm suddenly liked me, or people just resonated, or I started speaking about, I don't know. Or to me, I've always felt like it's been long overdue, because I used to joke, I'm like, why is my Instagram stuck? But my TikTok kept growing, and then finally Instagram started to catch up. So I'm
what
grateful.
Do you feel like has been the most effective platform to get your message out that resonates with people? TikTok, Instagram, YouTube?
I think it's a really good question. And I think that it probably just comes down to what people want. Like, if people want and appreciate the science side of things or the education side, I think Instagram, people learn it more effectively. And I feel like there's just a better conversation there. I think TikTok, though, in terms of eyeballs and just getting out to as many people as possible, I think TikTok's the far superior platform. Mm-hmm. So, but I feel like everyone should be on both. If you're not on both, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's jump into nutrition. And before we talk about the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, I would love for you to walk us through what happens blood sugar wise when we eat a meal. What actually happens? How does our blood sugar go up physiologically? And then we can kind of dovetail that into diabetes, type 1, type 2.
I was about to be like, how nerdy do you want me to get into like
Yes.
Nerdy. We love it.
gluten
Yeah.
transporters and all that? But basically, so for someone with a working pancreas, right? So not me or someone living with diabetes, what's going to happen is you eat the food, really even before the food, you start to see the food and your body starts to prime itself. Your, pancreas starting to give a little teeny squirt of insulin. And then once you eat it, the food starts to get digested, it goes through your body, your blood sugar starts to rise. But effectively, once GLUT2 gets activated, the insulin starts to come out of the pancreas. That's why most people without diabetes, like if you eat something, I one time went and got pancakes with my friend. He was wearing a CGM. His blood sugar went to a whole 94 after eating like 140 carbs. Like, this is not fair.
Yeah.
But his blood sugar, it went up a teeny little bit and came right back to 82 because the body's so good at regulating it and it knows and can prime and can give such specific amounts. For someone like me, my body doesn't do that, right? So in a nutshell, the food hits, my insulin has to be timed perfectly to know, okay, food's gonna kick in 15 minutes or so. I need to make sure my insulin's ready to go because it's gonna peak in 45 to 60 minutes. My number will probably go up, then it'll start to come back down. And then from there, ideally, if I nail the dose, whatever I started with is pretty much what it should end at. So if I started at 110, I should end at 110. If I start at 170, if my dose is correct, I should end there. But because of, the imprecision of living with diabetes, sometimes it ends up higher, sometimes it ends up lower. And that's the whole challenge. You have to be able to balance most of the time.
And what is it that actually, signals to your body to release insulin? Like you said, is it just like, does it happen just automatically once you start to eat? Is there foods that, cause you to secrete more insulin? Like how does your body respond? Say just a normal person that doesn't have diabetes, or not a normal person, but someone that doesn't, and then maybe, why get into a little bit of like why, I guess we'll get into that in a moment, but how that works specifically with someone who has diabetes or how it's different.
So what'll happen is your body will start to sense, like in the liver, in these, GLUT2 transporters, they'll start to say, hey, there's carbs here. It's typically carbs that are starting off the cascade. Technically, protein can do it too in large enough quantities, but carbs are typically the main perpetrator, which is why everyone demonizes them, and we can definitely talk about that. But once it notices that, it'll say, okay, here's some insulin, go. And then what's going to happen is your body has these, effectively these receptors, these GLUT4 receptors that go to the surface of the cell. The insulin's there. And between that, the insulin will attach, and then it has the ability to bring these carbs into the cell. So instead of these carbs and this glucose, carbs will break down to glucose. It normally just sits in your blood, but because now the key is effectively activated, they can go into the cell. So it's not just sitting there. Again, someone with diabetes, you don't necessarily have that luxury, or it's not working as well. So the glucose just sits there, or there's too much glucose compared to the receptors, like in type 2, and there's just glucose sitting in the blood, therefore a higher blood sugar. Yeah. Oh, this is nerdy. This is fun.
Yeah, I love it. And then why is it bad for us to have excess glucose in our bloodstream?
So a bunch of reasons, but the most succinct version would be, number one, it puts us in a position where it's just sitting there. The oxygen can't transport to where it has to go. The nutrients can't transport to where they have to go through, red blood cells, et cetera, because the blood is literally syrupy. Like, there's too much glucose in it. It's thicker. It just is not what it's supposed to be doing. And then second, over time, this can damage some of like the endothelial tissue. It can damage the little blood vessels in your eyes, in your kidneys, in your,
your feet
down below. We'll just call it that. It can do a lot of damage over time. Nerve endings can have an issue as well. So there's all these different things that over time, it's not immediate, right? It has to happen over a long duration of time. Elevated blood sugar for a long time typically can lead to these complications, which is why it's so important to keep blood sugars under control, whether you have diabetes or not, but especially if you have diabetes.
Makes sense. Well, thanks for breaking that down.
I know you've already kind of talked about the difference between type 1, type 2, but can you just break down what is the difference between type 1 diabetes versus type 2 diabetes for the average person?
So I would say that with type 1, it's typically your pancreas just quits making insulin. Like, there's usually an autoimmune thing that starts it off. It says, hey, let's kill off all the beta cells. Now there's no beta cells. Now there's no insulin being, produced, which means you have to get insulin from an outside source. So usually that means taking insulin through an injection, through an insulin pump, some sort of method of getting it from an outside source. Type 2 is there's a big need for this insulin, but whether it's the body being too big, the body not working efficiently, the pancreas is working in overdrive trying to meet this demand, and it can't meet the demand. So it keeps trying and trying and trying and trying. That's why there's a bunch of, oral medications that can sensitize the insulin and make it work better for what's already being made. But if there aren't lifestyle changes or nutritional changes or activities changes being made, at some point, the pancreas can't keep up with the demand, and it's been working too hard, too long, and it just burns out. And then you have to take insulin from an outside source. So it can kind of lead to that insulin dependence, even though it's type 2. So you have time to do something about it. The key is if you're willing to do something.
Absolutely.
And then where does pre-diabetes fit into this? And why is it maybe not, maybe it's painted as like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like you go to your doctor, we hear all the time from clients like, oh, I have pre-diabetes, but it's not a big deal. Maybe explain what it is first, and then maybe why it is a bigger deal than people are led to believe.
So, and I'll explain this in the context of the typical diabetes diagnosis as well. So usually one of the markers that people will look at is what's your A1C, which is effectively the average of what your blood sugar has been over the last 3 months. So ideally A1C, I mean, for people with type 1, it's a different standard, but for the typical person, you want to be 4.85, 5.1, very low. It's usually a good thing. It's literally the amount of glucose that's stuck to your red blood cells over a long period of time. However, 6.5 is the cutoff for once you're over 6.5 or over, you have diabetes, type 2, type 1, regardless. Pre-diabetes would be 5.7 to 6.4. So you're on your way. It's elevated. It's not quite to the point of type 2 or, just a formal diabetes diagnosis. So there's still time to fix it and intervene, but you're trending in the wrong direction. So that's where it's kind of like a wake up call, or should be like a warning sign. Hey, something is off. You need to do something, or this will develop into diabetes.
So 5.7 is kind of your cutoff for, that is pre-diabetes by definition, right?
Yeah. Like if you're at 5.6, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm 5.6, I'm in the clear. Like I would be thinking, I don't want to end up in the pre-diabetes range, because then you're going to be monitored more. There's going to be other stuff you have to do. Like ideally, you're hanging out 5, 4.8, 4.9.
Okay, we got to talk. Mine was 5.4 when I got my blood work done.
You're still fine.
No, I'm not, Ben. I'm worried about me.
I mean... Okay, there's a million other. If you're 5.4 and you're sitting on your butt and eating Cheetos all day, I'm going to be a little more concerned than someone who's clearly living the message that they talk about.
Okay.
So should the average person, like how often should someone measure their A1C? And
what age should somebody be starting to like check, or what warning sign should they be thinking where I need to get my blood checked?
I mean, I would say for someone just, your typical average healthy person, yearly labs would probably be an ideal situation. Could you get them twice a year? Probably. And I would say, and this again, I'm probably biased given my diagnosis being younger, but once you're 18, I would think every year getting labs done would be a great idea. If you're under that, there should probably be a compelling reason. But beyond that, I would say that's probably the best thing there.
Yeah.
And then what about like testing your blood sugar, either like with a finger prick or a continuous glucose monitor? Like, would you recommend that for someone who, maybe isn't in the pre-diabetes or, has full blown diabetes yet?
I wouldn't necessarily rush to go do it. I don't think it's the worst thing to have on hand, kind of like in the, the cabinet in the bathroom that you don't go into unless there's a really big problem type of situation. It's like $20 at Walmart. But if you were to do that, I would say for symptoms, right? You're looking at, are you peeing a lot? Are you losing weight uncontrollably? This is specific to type 1. Like some people have lost like 30 pounds in a month out of nowhere. And they're like, what's wrong with me? Some people are thrilled they lost the 30 pounds in a month, but it wasn't by the right means, right? Yeah. But those are two big things, lots of peeing and lots of drinking water. Like diabetes is literally Greek for pees a lot. So that's, I'd say, one of the biggest things to be thinking about. Of course, irritability, just feeling like tired all the time for no reason. These are all symptoms of high blood sugar. But if people don't know, they're like, oh, I feel kind of funky. If it's going on for weeks on end, it might be worth doing a finger stick, but I wouldn't rush to do it without, consulting with the care team.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about how big of a problem diabetes is in the United States today, specifically type 2 diabetes. So I was looking up some stats, and correct me if any of these are wrong, but I saw that like 11.6% of Americans today have diabetes. We work with a lot of older folks, so people, over the age of 60 often. And from my reading, it looks like even more of that group has diabetes, something like 29, maybe 30% of people over 60, 65 have diabetes. And this doesn't even take into account the massive number of people with pre-diabetes. And kids today are getting type 2 diabetes. And it used to be called
adult onset
type 2 diabetes. And now it's like, we can't call it that anymore. Because, I had a friend growing up who had type 1 diabetes. Only guy I knew that had type 1, but I didn't know anybody with type 2. And I grew up in, the 90s. So what's going on? And how did we get here?
I mean, and without going down all of the crazy, conspiratorial rabbit holes, I think in a nutshell, and I say this with all the love in the world of society, but I think society has had a lot of things become very convenient and almost overly convenient. So they don't have to try very hard. Like you can order food on Uber Eats. It tastes good. It comes in, 30 minutes or however long. You can order your groceries. You don't have to really try a whole lot. All of this leads to you're moving less. You're not having to do a whole lot of things. And lifestyle wise, we're staying up later, we're scrolling, we're doom scrolling, whatever you want to call it. There's all these different factors in play where sleep has gotten, become less and less of a prominent thing. People aren't making the food choices that they could, and everything's hyper palatable. And then activity, there's so many things. You have a sedentary job, you then go to, sedentary activities afterwards. People love their video games, etc. So there's not enough emphasis on physical activity. And even the people that say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, that's amazing. But what about the other 23 hours of the day? So there's a lot of factors where I think lifestyle wise, things have become really comfortable, which is great. But because no one wants to push that comfort zone, not no one, most people don't, then it becomes a lot easier for these things to happen. Plus, there's the genetic factors of, did it come through your family? If you're predisposed to it, it'll be easier for it to happen to you.
Definitely. Yeah. So multifactorial. There's not one thing that we point our finger at and say, this is the reason. It's just a slow deterioration of our entire societal fabric.
Yeah. And again, I say that with all the love in the world of society, and I love the direction of so many things, but I think that has contributed to making lives more difficult from a diabetes standpoint.
Mm-hmm. So the stat was, for those over 65, the rate's 29.2%. Do you believe that?
I do.
Sounds right. Okay.
And it's wild that it is, but I think at the same time too, from a pancreas standpoint, right? Those are also older pancreases. So their efficiency may not be as good just by default, let alone all the other lifestyle factors.
And is it the older pancreas just doesn't work as well because it's older, or because it's been beat up over the course of the lifespan?
That's I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. I honestly would say, I think it's kind of a combination. I think just the age of it, because not like, oh, we get a new car, get a new pancreas, like that would be great, but it doesn't quite work like that. But then beyond that, I think there have been times where people may have had things that weren't great when they were in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and now it's all compounded over time in a negative way.
What, in your experience, has been the medical world's solution to diabetes? So somebody goes into their doctor, their A1C is 7. Yep. What's the first thing that the doctor is going to do for them in traditional medical world?
So typically, and I would say this with a lot of people, ironically, with type 1 that end up being misdiagnosed with type 2 out of the gate, because they'll present with exactly what you're describing. Oh, your A1C 7, so it's high. Maybe there's a couple other symptoms. Maybe you lost a few pounds, or maybe you're peeing a lot, but we'll just put you on metformin and it'll all be better. That's typically the classic. They'll put you on something. Typically, metformin is one of the first lines. Maybe they'll put a different type 2 medication in there. Maybe, dare I say it these days, maybe they'll be like, oh, you can go on a GLP-1. It'll be okay, and that'll fix it all. And sometimes it does help at the beginning, but very often, again, it doesn't really solve the underlying problem. It just says, here's a Band-Aid for it. Have fun.
And what does metformin do in plain English?
Most of the oral drugs, and metformin is the most common example, they typically just, in a nutshell, sensitize the body's ability to use the insulin that it's already making.
Okay.
So let's just pretend that your pancreas is working at 70% of its optimal capacity. Well, you need to make up that other 30%. You're already making something. Well, this might help give you that extra boost to be able to meet the demand. So now your blood sugar is not running as high. So that's all. To me, it doesn't mean metformin, but it could be any of the oral meds that would be the first line.
And you're saying that it's a temporary Band-Aid. So does your body become do you need more and more of it the longer you take metformin in order for it to continue to be effective? Or do people typically just go on it and stay on it for the rest of their life, continuing to have blood sugar issues?
I think it depends on the person. I think some people start to respond, and then if they don't fix the underlying other lifestyle factors, their need may go up, especially if their pancreas becomes less efficient or doesn't work as well. But some people are okay with it in general. And then you get the people who are misdiagnosed. The doctor thinks they're type 2 and they're really latent onset, type 1. And then over time, their pancreas just stops functioning and their blood sugars run higher and higher. And they get put on, I think there was the most I've ever heard is someone telling me they were put on 4 different oral drugs for type 2, and none of them were working because they were type 1. So there's no insulin being made. Of course, there's no insulin sensitizing. So it's just kind of thrown at people and said, here you go. and not nobody, but again, not as many people want to do the underlying work. I tell people, whether it's a GLP-1, metformin, whatever, that is a helpful springboard to launch from to allow you to fix everything else underneath to then give you a better shot at, whether it's reversal, whether it's just better blood sugars, whatever it might be.
Is that something that happens a lot where people get misdiagnosed with type 2, but they actually have type 1?
I would say for adults, especially, because of course, like you mentioned the kids you knew growing up, or, hey, this is the one person I know with diabetes. People still characterize it as, oh, juvenile diabetes. Oh, you're a kid. Like I was 7. There's a lot more people now. I think the latest I've ever heard someone getting diagnosed with type 1 is like 65.
Wow.
Like it's just wild. And most of them are that, the LADA is what we call it, but like the latent onset where it develops really slowly over time. And so because of that, if you're an adult, you come in, you're like, oh, someone comes in, they're 20 pounds overweight. They present with all the symptoms of type 2. They're not even going to check antibodies. They're not going to do anything. They're just going to say, cool, you probably have type 2. Here's your drug. Bye. Have fun. See you in 6 months. When that doesn't actually solve anything. And I personally think if anyone's got diabetes or getting diagnosed, asking for the antibody test, it's just another blood test that will at least tell you if it's going to be type 1 or if it's not type 1.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So is type 1 completely genetic, or are there lifestyle factors you think today that are potentially exacerbating it?
Ooh. I mean, the answer I'm supposed to tell you is you're genetically predisposed for it. And there's something that just triggers it, but we don't know what it is. A lot of people assume it's a virus of some sort. They are trying to identify which one specifically, but there was a huge spike after COVID, which was interesting because I think, again, that could have been the virus that kind of turned everything on, but it's usually dormant. It's there. Something triggers it. Boom. It manifests that way. But it's autoimmune. So something has to be the thing that starts it. And if you have other autoimmune conditions, we joke, oh, if you've got type 1, you probably have something else as well. It's buy one, get one free. So if you have autoimmune in general.
What a deal. What a deal.
Oh, I was gonna say it's not a fun situation. I think the record for that I've heard is someone having 9. And I was like, that is
9 autoimmune conditions.
Yes.
Wow.
Dang.
That was one of the few people where I was like, I do not think we are the best suited to support, because we could handle like 4 or 5. 9 is a lot.
That's nuts.
Do you remember starting to feel, I mean, I know you were 7, but do you remember starting to feel like suddenly there was something where you're like, I don't feel good, or my body's just like not responding the way I want it to, or feeling lethargic or more tired?
The biggest thing I remember, and it's weird of all things, I actually remember having a low blood sugar, but not knowing what it was. Because I was at a summer camp and we went swimming, and that's a classic thing that will just knock your blood sugar off a cliff and just make it tank. And I was really hungry, like starving hungry, like as if I had a low. And then we sat down, we ate lunch, and then I felt better. And it happened 2 or 3 days in a row. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh, I must just be really hungry because I just did a lot of activity and swimming, and I was fine. So I didn't think anything of it until after I was diagnosed, and I realized that was probably a low blood sugar, and I just had no idea what the symptoms were. That's the one thing that I specifically remember.
Interesting. And what led your parents to starting to get tests, and were there other things that kind of like triggered them, getting further testing and blood work and all that?
Well, and I'm really grateful that my dad's in the field, so he knows kind of what to look out for. But from what he's told me, I was going to the bathroom all the time, and I had lost about 7 pounds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're 7 years old and you're already relatively small, that's a huge amount. Yeah. And I wasn't trying to, and it wasn't like, oh, you're at camp and you're running around. I was still eating and the weight just kept dropping. So that was definitely a warning sign. So between those two, that was enough for him to say, let's get labs. And I'm really grateful because most people end up in diabetic ketoacidosis where they're admitted to the hospital. They're there for a week, 2 weeks. Their blood sugar is 900. One person I talked to once, their blood sugar was 1500 and they were in a coma. And I'm just impressed that they made it. So it's insane.
So they say it's bad enough, it will kill you.
Oh, if your blood sugar gets super, 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 super high, it can absolutely. And DKA is scary because you literally, everyone talks about the keto diet. So that those same ketones, if your body can't do anything with the sugar that's sitting in the blood, it needs energy somehow. So it starts to break the fat down that you have stored into ketones, makes your blood acidotic. And once that starts to happen, once it's acidic, you start breathing out these ketones, like your breath is kind of fruity. It feels really gross, but over time that can eventually lead to death if you're not careful. So it's very scary.
Yeah. That is super scary. Before we get into talking about what people can do to control their blood sugar, I'd love to just touch on prediabetes. And we have lots of people come in that say things like, I'm I don't have any medical conditions. I have prediabetes, but doctor says not to worry about that. Should people be concerned if their A1C is 5.7? We already touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to just get your take on prediabetes.
I think it's something more so where I would use it again, like kind of like a warning sign, kind of like a, hey, like if you would think of a traffic light, right? Green, yellow, red, I'd put it on yellow.
Okay.
Like you're paying attention. What can you potentially do? And obviously, like you said, we'll get into what people can do in general, but you should probably start digging into what you're doing lifestyle wise, nutritionally, activity wise, sleep, stress, etc., to see how you can get that a little better, because it still can manifest as full blown diabetes. So it's kind of a, let's see if I can do something. If you're doing everything and you can check every single box, then it might be worth digging in deeper and saying, okay, with your care team, what other options exist? Because I'm already doing all of the things. Mm-hmm. Or is this something else? And, like, I'm not saying you're for sure, in that case, that person's type 1, but are there antibodies you can check? Is there deeper testing you can look into at that point? But I would definitely kind of take it as a wake up call. If someone's close or they need to drop X number of pounds, I would start that process.
All right, let's talk nutrition.
Yeah.
So somebody comes to you with diabetes. Does it matter whether they have type 1 or type 2 based on like just general recommendations, or can we put those both in the same kind of bucket?
I would say, and I think it's a really good question, I would say most stuff overlaps probably 80-90%. The biggest caveat is when it comes to obviously the type 1s needing insulin, that just becomes the wrinkle in the equation that the type 2s likely don't have to worry about. But medication to an extent is medication. If you miss time at type 1 or type 2, you can still end up with a low, you can still end up with a high. So I'd say there's enough overlaps. You could talk about it just in a nutshell.
Okay. Well, talk to us about nutrition. What's most important? How do you counsel people from a nutrition standpoint who have diabetes, whether it be type 1 or type 2?
I think the biggest thing is first off to not demonize the carbs, because everybody immediately says, well, if you have diabetes, no carbs for you. Can't have cake, can't have sugar. Like, you can have these things, but you obviously have to be smart about how you have it, when you have it, how much you have, etc. And there are times, and I do it on social media, where I will intentionally order something that should be off limits and show this is what my blood sugar did, and I was fine because I planned it, and here's what I did to conquer said food adventure. But the biggest things out of the gate that we always try to advise to our patients and to people in general is there's got to be sufficient protein there, because protein is going to help stabilize your blood sugar. Of course, there's obviously the recovery impact from a workout perspective, but from a blood sugar side, it will help stabilize things. There's got to be fiber in there, because that's going to prevent the blood sugar from ideally spiking as high as it otherwise would. And then we like to see, is there some sort of fruit or vegetable in there? Because, and it sounds goofy, but the potassium aspect is a much bigger deal than people realize. And having that available is going to help from a hydration standpoint and electrolytes. For whatever reason, I don't even know if there's research behind this, but we just have seen it thousands of times. The electrolyte standpoint is such a big deal. Like stubborn high blood sugar, not coming down, hydrate with electrolytes, and it typically will start to drop. Wow.
I have so many follow-up questions. Will you tell people to drink like Element or something like that to get their electrolytes, or do you recommend something else?
I mean, of course, if you can get it from food, that's the preferred way. But to your point, I always try to advise people, look for the ones with potassium more so than sodium.
Salt.
Because it's so easy. I mean, you guys know this. It's so easy to get sodium. You eat something out of a can, you get something frozen, there's 700 milligrams right there. But potassium, everybody tends to be off. And so like, what I like is I have it sitting over there. And I have no affiliation with this brand, but Keto 1000 has a great product where they have a little magnesium, a little chloride, a teeny bit of sodium, but it's like 1,000 milligrams of potassium.
Okay.
It tastes great. Mix it in water and it does awesome. But like that does great. Body Armor has the Flash IV pouches. That's got, I think, 500 or 700 milligrams of potassium. Even the Pedialyte pouches are generally okay. Obviously, there is a carb component, but those are okay because at least the balance of sodium and potassium is better. But when it's tilted, like Elements, I think got 1,000 for sodium.
Yeah, it's
like
1,000 sodium. Is it 200 potassium?
I was just looking it up. Yeah, it's 200 milligrams of potassium and then 60 of magnesium.
That's just not enough potassium.
It's just not relative to the sodium, because most people are so out of balance. And I ask people, they're like, oh, like, do you notice anything? They're like, no. And then they start to have more potassium. They're like, oh, I feel a lot better. Like, I don't like when people feel disgusting, whether they've just gone on a really long hike or something else, it's usually because their balance is completely out of whack. And that's diabetes or not.
Okay.
So we just.
And how much potassium would you recommend someone gets in a day, like milligrams?
I mean, I would love to see somebody at a starting point at least 2,500 milligrams. Don't
Dang.
go crazy. Don't be like, I'm eating 9,000, which I had one guy try to do that. I'm like, no, that's also not great because your heart may not like you. Because too much potassium can cause issues with that. But yeah, I would say for people to aim for 2,500 out of the gate, ideally, you're getting closer to, 3,500, 4,000. And how I love it is if you can try to get the potassium higher than the sodium, at some point it will obviously shift. But
Yep.
if you're eating 3,000 milligrams of sodium and then 4,000 of potassium, your balance should not have any issues.
Should people just eat like 6 bananas a day?
I know.
What do you think, Ben?
Well, with the carb aspect, it's not that I have a problem with it, but I think everyone thinks bananas. Ironically, like cauliflower, ton of potassium, barely
Really?
any
Okay.
impact on your blood sugar. Broccoli, ton of potassium. Brussels sprouts, ton of potassium. So I always say, aim for the veggies first if you can. Strawberries also have a ton if you eat enough of them. Blueberries as well. So I try to people, those also have greater amounts of fiber. So can we try to find something that's got higher fiber? Ideally lower carb if possible, just from that standpoint of not having to increase carbs if we don't have to. Bananas are great if you're going on a hike or about to work out, but I wouldn't try to just have them for the sake of having them.
Okay. So let's say that you've got a female who's in her 60s. She's type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. She's 180 pounds ish, overweight, wants to be like 145. How much protein does she need per day?
Well, I was going to say, well, first thing I'm looking at is if the need versus where she's starting at, because I know
Yeah.
from a need standpoint, just with math off the top of my head, I'd want her to eventually, assuming kidney function is on point, I'd want her to get closer to 160, 155, if possible.
Protein
That's a
wise?
lot. Yes, but that's a lot.
Dang.
That's
Okay.
a lot. However, if she's eating 50 grams a day,
Yeah,
which
let's
I've
say
seen
she is, which is a lot of people.
cool, then I'm gonna up her to 70.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm
you're
not
going to
making
slowly
math.
titrate it up over time.
100%.
Love
Because
that.
there's a 0% chance that anyone is going to stick to.
She's
cool,
going to
I'm
get protein
50, now
farts
you're gonna
so
eat
bad.
100 more. Not a chance.
Yeah.
I was saying that part too. Yeah.
And
That
then do you
part is-
recommend that people spread out like protein intake throughout the day? And then if so, what's kind of like a general, like this is how many grams of protein you should have at each meal?
I would say sweet spot would, if you can spread it out, it would be ideal. But it's obviously everyone talks about the muscle protein synthesis is better, etc. Yes, it would be nice, but even just from a blood sugar standpoint, that stabilization every single time you eat would be great. I would say if you can aim for at least 25 grams
Per
per
meal.
meal would be an awesome starting point. Now for, Sally in your example, we'll name her that. Sally.
That's actually her name.
I was gonna say that'd be amazing. But yeah, if she's eating 50 a day, okay, well now I want her at 70. Maybe she can aim for 20, 25, something like that. It has to be reasonable, but there also has to be enough there to do something. If you're like, oh, I had 5 grams at breakfast, you're gonna have no benefit to your blood sugar. And on top of that, it's just not really going to contribute towards your goal. Now you're in the hole having to make up the rest of it.
So your net goal though is to get Sally to a gram per pound of ideal body weight or per pound of body weight. Was that how you came up with the 165?
So I tried to do it in my head where I
Yeah.
was like, okay, she's 180. I try to get people, again, assuming no kidney issues, etc. I try to get people close to like 0.9
0.9.
if they're
Okay.
trying to lose weight, because that ends up being roughly 2 grams per kilogram, which is typically the upper edge. And with that, from a diabetes standpoint, it tends to work great. Some people can't tolerate that much. Some people will never get that far. But if we can get her, knowing where we want to get her, if we can get her from 50 to 110, I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
I just know I want to see in her world, I want to see her at triple digits at an absolute minimum. Because I know that there's the ideal and then there's the realistic.
Yeah.
So that's always the challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much fiber does Sally need per day?
Oh, at least 20 grams. That's
20
not
grams.
even a question. A perfect world, get her up to 30, but I'd say you start her at 20. This is fun. I've never done something like this before. Live on but yeah, at least 20. If she can get closer to 25 or 30, I'm stoked. But again, she's probably eating 12 grams. So can we get her to 15? Can we get her to 18? Cool. She's at 20 now. Can she maintain 20 every day of the week? Becomes another story.
Okay.
And I was going to say, we've also had clients who, when they've suddenly increased their fiber intake, suddenly have a ton of GI issues because they're just, their body isn't used to it. And so do you have, like recommendations on what you would tell them if they're like, oh my gosh, it's way too much. I was in the bathroom, 10 times yesterday when I started eating 30 grams of fiber.
I wouldn't jump immediately to 30. Like I would if she's at 12, I'm like, okay, cool. What are you already doing that we can just shift that might have a little more? Maybe, and I'm making this up, but maybe you're having this ordinary, white bread. Can we switch it to, 1 piece is whole wheat? Now you're up 3 grams. So just little things like that tends to go a long way. There are people, and to your point, there was one patient I remember, he was eating 120 grams of fiber a day. And I was like, dude, what? Like, no. He's like, well, I had this, keto snack and these special, tortillas, and I had 4 of them. I'm like, no, like, we're gonna bring this down because it gets to a point
His
where
net carbs are actually negative.
exactly.
Yeah, he was at -10 net carbs.
Oh my God.
There was when I was a kid that I saw a label that had negative carbs on it. I was laughing. I'm like, I could eat this all day and it would be great. But I obviously didn't. But
I didn't know that was possible. I was joking.
oh no, that was the only label I've ever seen. I obviously wish I had a picture, but that was before, phones with cameras were a thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
regardless, very slow. Like I would not just jump. And if someone's I have tortillas over there that have like I think 10 grams each. She could add that in, but if she starts getting GI distress, it might be an every other day type of add-in until her body gets used to it.
Okay.
Got it. What's your take on seed oils and diabetes? Like, do you think that they have any effect on people with diabetes?
And this is a fun one because I feel like if I answer like definitively yes, this is absolutely a problem, then I'm going to get the people, oh my God, it's not. And then if I'm like, no, it's no issue, then the super anti-seed oil people are going to get mad. But I think if you can avoid them and it's convenient and you're not going to spend 5 times more to do it, I think it's fine to, go and have, avocado oil, olive oil, etc. Like ideally you're aiming towards those from the omega-3 standpoint anyway. But if you eat something that has seed oils, you're not going to, spontaneously combust.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of can you still balance that out with enough omega-3s from other sources, ideally fish, right? Or just straight up olive oil to counteract that. But from like, free radicals, this and that. In the diabetes world, we've already got so much of that stuff going on anyway. Like a little bit of seed oil is not going to tip the scale one way or another, most likely.
Nice. So we talked about carbs and how I think if I'm getting to know your perspective a little bit, you want people to feel the freedom to have food adventures, which typically include carbs, which I want to ask you about some of your food adventures in a little bit here. But if you had to recommend for a Sally, let's say she's like, I just want to be healthy. How many grams of carbs per day should she be eating outside of her food adventure days?
Right. So like a typical day.
Yeah.
The irony is, and I know I mentioned like protein specific numbers like per meal and stuff.
Yeah.
To me, there really isn't like a defined eat this many carbs. And I think that might just be, trauma from when I was a child of being told I had to eat 45 to 60 grams at breakfast and 60 to 75 at lunch and everything was in 15. And I thought it was stupid. But the reality is when it comes to this, if she feels good and she's like, hey, at breakfast, I'm going to eat 27. At lunch, I'm going to eat 41. As long as the blood sugars are balanced and she has those other components we talked about, I don't think there's necessarily a perfect number. There are people, I genuinely think there are people that are on this end of the spectrum of, hey, I do better on higher fat, lower carb. And there's people on the other end that do greater on higher carb and lower fat. And it's more
even folks with diabetes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've had people eating 450 grams of carbs a day with an A1C of 5.8 while they're type 1. And I've had people eating 40 grams of carbs per day with an A1C of 5.8 as type 1. So to me, I'm like, that should be the definitive proof of it's more so can I match the person versus can we find like the optimal number? Like I happen to be personally in the 140, 150 range, which isn't crazy high.
Yeah.
But that's just what works for me. Like what works for someone else. I mean, there may be an athlete who needs 300 grams and I have no issue with that as long as their numbers are controlled.
Okay, so numbers controlled. How would somebody know that they're eating too many carbs? Like
that would be if they're wearing a CGM.
Let's say they're wearing a continuous
perfect
glucose
world,
monitor.
you have diabetes. Hopefully, your doctor's giving you a CGM. If not, go find another doctor.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you're wearing a CGM, you're gonna know just because your blood sugar is gonna be out of range. You're gonna every time you eat, your blood sugar is gonna go out of range, and then it's probably going to stay out of range for a while. So, I mean, that could go for anyone, right? But anyone with diabetes, you're up, you're high, you're sitting there. That's a very telltale sign if that's happening constantly that either your insulin's off if you're on insulin or your meds are off, or you're just eating way too many.
So when you're looking at a CGM, if your blood sugar does come up, you want it to come down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like you just don't want it to stay up for a long time.
Yeah. The in my mind, the worst, and I'll use that, air quotes, the worst thing is if your blood sugar is high and it just stays high, because then that's where all of the, microvascular issues will start to happen. But also, it depends how high you're going. If your blood sugar is going from, hey, I ate the meal and I was 85, I went up to 150, like, all right, cool, that's fine. But if you're 85 and you go up to 350, yeah, that's going to be a much bigger issue. And to your point, you do want to come down quick. You also don't want to overshoot on the way down because then you end up with, oh, my blood sugar is 50. Now I feel like I want to eat the entire fridge. And then you're on this roller coaster you never get off of.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Okay, so we talked about a lot of different things nutritionally. Do you think people with diabetes, prediabetes should do things like fasting, like intermittent fasting? I'm sure you heard of Jason Fung.
Of course.
Yeah. Um, yeah. What do you think of his philosophy of how you can fix your diabetes with fasting, specifically type 2?
I don't think that fasting is necessarily a problem. A lot of people will be like, no, you have diabetes, don't fast. Like you can. It just, again, it comes down to, can you manage your blood sugar as you're doing it? Because a lot of people, and I will speak on the type 1 side, given that I personally do intermittent fasting, right? But I do it because I'm lazy and I don't want to eat until 11 o'clock. But like I've done it for 10 years. Like it's totally doable. But if your numbers are happy, a lot of people will see, oh, I didn't eat anything. My blood sugar was great. You can't have that mindset of I'm just not going to eat because then I'm never going to eat because my blood sugar will stay in range. That's a very negative food association from the, the whole cellular mitochondrial. Oh, it's going to do all this, autophagy and mitophagy and clean things up. Sure, that's fine. But again, it comes down to, are you still hitting your nutritional targets? And number two, in the type 2 world, if the goal is weight loss and having better blood sugars, it may help you, but it doesn't matter. If you're not in a deficit, you're not going to lose weight. You get a deficit eating every 2 hours if you want to. So I think it just comes down to what your goal is and why you're doing it. And if you're just doing it because it's cool, then that's probably a terrible reason.
Okay. So that's a great answer. So you're fine with it, but it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish and why you're trying to accomplish that. Cool.
Like for some of the like keto type things or some of the more.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about keto next, but I mean, you've kind of already answered it, I think, with some things you said earlier, but.
We'll say to patients, like if hey, I want to do keto. I'll be like, why? Like why do you want to do keto or carnivore?
I want to eat bacon and butter, Ben.
And I got no issue. I've also done all of these different diets because I figured it was probably a good idea to know what it's like firsthand. So I have the lived experience. But like having done low carb I've done 18 months, 2 different times. I know what it's like, and I know it can be amazing. I also know it can lead to a ton of insulin resistance and drive people's blood sugars and just have them sit high for hours with no way to bring it down because of the fat. So someone comes to us, will say, why? What is your rationale? And if they have a good reason, I'll be like, cool, let's try it, or let's step your carbs down to get you there. On the flip side, they're like, oh, I want to do it because I saw in an article it would be cool. I'm like, that's a terrible reason. So here, we'll have you try to do lower carb for 2 days and see how it goes. And they don't usually make it through day 1.
So it can lead to insulin resistance? I didn't know that. How does that work?
So and I will speak to this again from my experience, given it's probably the easiest way to talk about it. And I have all the CGM data. So what'll happen is you have no carbs or minimal carbs, right? So your protein will then break down into glucose, gluconeogenesis will happen. So your blood sugar will rise, which is fine. But what can happen then is you have a bunch of fat, because like you said, butter, bacon, all the delicious, stuff. And then with the fat will just induce insulin resistance. So it basically just sits like, it's basically a force field. Like your blood sugar basically will not move. It will just sit there. It's a 160, 170. It's fine. It's not crazy high, but it will not drop. And it will finally 6, 7, 8 hours later, when it's all processed, it'll drop. But if you eat in that time frame, you're just extending it out. So I've seen people's graphs, they're just sitting at 170, and it's not ideal.
That's terrible.
So, right. It's not an ideal situation. And again, are there ways to get through it? Absolutely. Like if you're active, that will probably help use up some of the fat that's just sitting there. But if you eat enough of it, the fat's just sitting in your bloodstream waiting to get re-esterified and put where it needs to go. So yeah, not always great.
No, I didn't know that could happen. So that's super interesting. I have more nutrition questions.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. What are your thoughts on artificial sweeteners for people that maybe don't want to drink soda, but want to, do things like stevia or monk fruit? And maybe we could just lump in diet soda into this conversation as well.
I don't think they're awful. Like, I think there's people that'll be like, oh my God, aspartame, diet soda, worst. Like, it's fine. Like if you're abusing it, like anything else in life, it's probably not great. But when you're mentioning, stevia, monk fruit, I would say allulose, stevia, monk fruit are my top 3.
Okay. Because they're more natural. Is that?
Because they're more, well, allulose, especially because it's not overpowering. Because I feel like you have stevia and you're like, whoa, like that was powerful. That was a lot. Yeah. But allulose, I think it's a little less sweet than traditional sugar, but you can still bake with it. It does nothing to your blood sugar. And I've literally eaten it by the scoop to see what would happen, and nothing did.
But that doesn't raise your blood sugar at all?
Nothing. There's actually research in type 2 that shows it may improve your blood sugar and bring it down, which is wild. Type 1, it doesn't do anything.
Okay.
So allulose is my personal favorite. That's always been my favorite, but just because it has all the different uses. But with the other two, I think because they're more natural, because They don't have any impact on the gut as well. Those tend to be my favorites. The other ones, it's kind of like like sugar alcohol. If you can avoid it, ideally, I would advise to, because
Like
the
xylitol.
GI stress. Xylitol is okay in gum, but like if you're having like sorbitol, maltitol, like you get the sugar-free syrup at like you go to, I don't know, whatever, IHOP, which again, shout out IHOP, but you go there and get the sugar-free stuff and there's maltitol and you just pour that stuff all over, like you're probably going to end up with gas and or diarrhea. So, and if you eat enough of it, it will be an issue. So, but the other stuff, again, like aspartame, all that, a lot of it can affect your gut, which can technically, in an indirect way, impact your blood sugar, impact your, the hedonic pleasure food sensors in your brain. It can lead to a whole lot of other stuff, which is not great with chronic use for too much over a long period of time.
Okay, but somebody who has diabetes that says, "Hey, Ben, I want to drink diet soda," you'd say probably fine in moderation. That's not the first thing that we're going to get rid of for sure.
I wouldn't be like, I wouldn't expect like, oh my God, this, like the studies that show that like saccharin and all that stuff will cause cancer. They're eating like pounds of it. Like if you eat pounds of anything, it's probably not a great idea in one sitting.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So,
wholeheartedly.
If you had to pick between someone, drinking like a diet soda versus just a regular, so if it was like Diet Coke versus Coke, what would you tell them to do?
And I can't say neither.
Yeah.
And I can't be like, only have regular Coke if your blood sugar's low. I mean, if it's,
let's say they don't care. They say, I'll drink either. I don't care.
Yeah. But they're especially if they're used to drinking soda. Yeah.
From a health
diabetes standpoint,
Yeah.
I think I have to answer the diet one.
Yeah.
It's, again, neither is an ideal situation, but at least I know your blood sugar is not going to go to the moon, because I feel like the regular soda for low blood sugar is totally fine. But when I see people like food diarrhea and they drank a Dr. Pepper, I'm just like, why? Like, and then especially I see the graph and it's like, voop, there you go. I'm like, well, what was the point of that? Like, that was preventable, man. So,
So you said something really interesting earlier, which was you did a food adventure recently and you prepared for it. So I would love to know, what was your latest food adventure and how did you prepare for it? So that I'm guessing you managed your blood sugar through it.
I feel like I try to do them like semi-regularly, because it's also really good content too, right? But the notable ones, the most fun one to share about, I think, would be, it was about a year ago, which of course, like I said, I do it more often. We went to Nashville and they have this place. It was called like Legendary Milkshakes.
Okay.
And they were legit legendary. Like I did the math on it. The milkshake was over 200 grams of carbs.
Dang.
It was glorious.
Legendary.
Massive milkshake. It was awesome. However, I'm like, I want to have this. So what am I going to do? I want to, increase my insulin sensitivity ahead of time. So trained the hell out of legs. Heavy leg day is going to be one of the best things in terms of insulin sensitivity. So now I have more wiggle room. If my dosing is off by a tiny bit, I know, okay, I've got a little bit of wiggle room there. We walked a bunch that day, so I knew that's also going to boost insulin sensitivity. I had protein ahead of time, so I know, okay, that should help with a little bit of stabilization. There's also going to be obviously fat within the milkshake, so technically that will help a little bit with stabilizing blood sugars. Could lead to a spike later on, but I was aware of that. And then the biggest thing was really just sitting down, and it doesn't have nutrition information. Like, you have to figure out how much is in that milkshake. And I sat down, went through each component of it. I think I even made a video for it. Through every component. It had cookie dough chunks. It had the ice cream, the syrup, everything. Went through all of it. Did not eat the whole thing. I will say that in full disclosure. I probably had like 2/3 of it, and my wife ate the rest of it. But made sure I dosed on time. And because of all of those factors, my blood sugar was just flat at like 130 the whole time. It came in at like 120, went to 130, never peaked and came all the way down. Like, it was just.
And you didn't
chilling.
Take a bunch of insulin.
Oh, I did. I had to take insulin.
Oh, okay.
I would have been in the hospital. That would be very.
But that's impressive.
I was like, that is the one perk for being a type 1 in that situation, is I can take the insulin as long as I know what the heck I'm doing.
Yeah.
But what I hate is when people are like, oh, I can eat this milkshake all the time because I can just take insulin. That's a very not great mindset to get into.
I love that you said that. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Like, it's fine. Like, I did that a year ago. Like, I'm not out here having a milkshake every week. It's like, hey, I had a milkshake then, and maybe every now and then I want to get some ice cream. Cool, I can do it. But you just have to be able to. We do like the 90-10 rule. Like, 90% of the time you're on point, 10% of the time live life, have fun, but also dose appropriately.
Yeah. So somebody without diabetes, if they wanted to do that same thing, they're like, I want to drink this giant milkshake. Should they do the same type of stuff? Should they be thinking, man, it'd be good if I walked a bunch, if I trained legs really hard, or just trained in general some big muscles within my body, and ate protein beforehand?
100%. Okay. I think the only difference between me and someone without diabetes is they don't have to worry about the insulin part.
Yeah.
And they don't, and I mean, if you're that specific into training, you're probably counting the macros anyway. So
Uh-huh.
ideally, you're sitting down and breaking it down. And it's amazing because that way also I fit that into my target for the entire day. So it wasn't even like, oh, I just blew my target out of the water and had all this crazy food. I'm like, I built this in and still was able to have it still hit my target. And I think I PR'd my bench the next day, which was nice. So
Nice. Milkshake PRs, baby.
exactly. That's why I would tell people like use that food to power your next PR. Like
Yeah.
do it smart. So
So great.
This is a great segue into
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah. I was going to say, what do you think is like the most important thing from a movement standpoint for people with diabetes? Like if you had to rank it, say like low level movement, strength training, endurance training, how would you rank it for someone with diabetes? Like what should they prioritize?
I would say I almost want to have a 1A, 1B, and then the last one. But I would say 1A, 1B would be strength training and then low level movement, like the list, as you called it, kind of the, low intensity, and then cardio after. Like I think all of them are important. They all have their place. But from a strength standpoint, muscle is going to be one of the biggest, providers of insulin sensitivity at baseline. Working out in general, you do one workout, it'll boost your insulin sensitivity for up to 72 hours, which is great. Of course, the more you train, the less of an impact you'll have, and it might be only 24 hours. But then if you're able to get, consistent steps, your body's moving, that's going to also boost your insulin sensitivity. So now you have it at rest and now you have it while you're moving. Those two things together, absolutely massive. So like I always encourage people, if nothing else, have a step goal. It doesn't have to be crazy, set at 7,000, but make sure you hit that religiously and your body will get used to that threshold. And of course, you go higher, amazing. Then cardio, obviously train your heart, but you're going to get some of that from the lower level movement. And then once a week, make sure your heart rate gets up. But you can also get that through training with lifting as well.
Why does lower body training, why did you do lower body training on the milkshake day? And why should people maybe prioritize that over, training arms or something like that?
So I always look at it as the larger muscle groups are going to require more energy from me. And because of that, if I train them really hard, I'm ideally depleting a larger source of glycogen. And therefore, if I've got this empty glycogen store, more empty than it otherwise would be, this milkshake can go refill it again. So that's how I try to do it. And I try to time like lower body movements. I also do crazy leg days. Like people don't usually like doing legs with me because of that. But because of that, I know I'm training my butt off. It's going to help.
Yeah. What is a crazy leg day for you? I would love to train together sometime, by the way, if you're ever out in LA.
That would be glorious. I wish I knew this a week ago. Then I would have been like, yeah, let's go. So leg day for me, I love whether you call it barbell hip thrust or glute bridge.
Nice.
I'll go very heavy and I'll do volumes. I'll do like 4 sets of 10 or 12, but I'll go to like, I think my 4 sets of 10 is like 500 pounds. So like I've worked my way up to that. Then I'll also make sure I'm deadlifting. I superset everything. So that glute bridge will be with, Bulgarian split squats. Then I'll have like a, jumping movement because I want to still stay athletic. Then I'll go into the deadlifts, single leg squat to box, another jumping type of movement. Then I'll go into leg press for, 3 sets of 25. And then I'm just going crazy volume. It works, hack squats, all that fun stuff. But a lot of people don't like it. I don't know. I feel like you guys would be able to handle it, but a lot of people may not.
I'd be
like
down.
it.
I'm down for whatever.
I just can't back squat. It's the only thing I'm not allowed to do because my hips all jacked up from baseball. So I wish I could. I used to have literally every Sunday was sacred squat Sunday and no longer.
Squat Sunday.
Yeah, it was a sad day when I couldn't do that anymore.
Oh man. All right. I want to work on your hips sometime too.
Yes, please. That would be amazing. I've been in, as you guys appreciate, I've been in PT forever because I'm a bucket of fun. I'm convinced diabetes has something to do with it, but I don't know exactly what.
Yeah.
So
It's amazing you're able to do all the other things that you can do though. Like it sounds like it's not limiting you outside of just back squats,
knocking on all of the wood.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, and I'm not going to be out here being like, oh, my form's amazing on everything and I'm absolutely perfect at it, but like, like anybody else. But yeah, I definitely have a cam impingement.
Yep. I got one of those probably too.
So for someone with diabetes, how many times a week would you recommend that they strength train? And then, outside of a step goal, what would you recommend like cardio wise that they try to incorporate into their lives?
I mean, perfect world, and obviously everyone's got to start from somewhere, but perfect world, I'd love to see 3 to 4 strength training, workouts per week, 1 to 2, like not high intensity, but you're getting your heart rate up. You can't have a casual conversation, type of strength training or not strength cardio. And then if you're just starting out, I'm like, hey, twice a week, 30 minutes, have at it. Do something strength related in your house. Like, I don't care. You've got a counter. If you can't do push-ups, on the floor, do push-ups on the counter, do lunges, just whatever you can do, just something to get yourself going with momentum strength wise. And then I feel like the step goal, in addition to like the 1 or 2 concentrated cardio bouts, should be plenty to start out with. So
Love it. That's great. What other lifestyle habits would you recommend?
Well, let's talk about each one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was going to say,
what's most important? Sleep, managing stress, sunshine, red light therapy. Like what is the most important lifestyle habit or biohack, cold heat, that people need if they have like their nutrition and exercise dialed in?
I always tell people the biggest X factor in blood sugars is sleep.
Yeah.
Like, it is insane at the difference. You could literally have a day where everything is exactly the same as the day before, but one day you slept for 5 hours and one day you slept for 9 hours. The day with 5 hours, your blood sugars will be higher and they will be harder to come down, and you're more insulin resistant just by nature of there's so much more cortisol floating around because your body's under duress because you didn't sleep good.
Yeah, I found the same thing because we both wore a CGM for a long time at the start of this year. Got blood work before, did this like challenge with our clients. We called it the Good Energy Challenge. And I found the days where we didn't sleep well or didn't sleep enough, just way harder to manage blood sugar on those days. So it's cool to hear you say that.
You also had he coaches our son's little league baseball team, and he would see spikes during the games from stress in his blood sugar.
I care too much about little league baseball.
Adrenaline is a nightmare. And the worst part is you really can't do anything. Like, I was just having the conversation with someone yesterday. They're playing high school baseball, and like, I'm trying out for this new team. It's super competitive. Everyone's really serious. And my blood sugar keeps going up. I'm like, that's because of the adrenaline. And there's really, until your subconscious brain chills out, there's not a whole lot you can do. Like, it's going to go up and it's going to stay high until you chill out, because people be like, oh, I took a bunch of insulin to bring it down. And I'm like, cool. Then in an hour when you're chilling out, you're going to fall off a cliff because, you have all this insulin on board and now your mind chilled out. So yeah, the spikes that you saw, it's probably very, very, very telling when you're like, okay, I did this thing and this is what happened. Like, it's wild. I feel like a lot of people in my situation take it for granted because we have to look at it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what would you say after sleep? What would be the kind of like next thing that you would, coach someone or recommend that they focus on?
I would say minimizing stress, because I would probably be a close second after sleep, as evidenced by, just the adrenaline. But in general, stress, just chronic high level stress will also raise your blood sugar and keep your blood sugar there. So we always try to tell people, hey, if you're down to meditate or at least try meditation, it tends to work really, really nicely. And if you are really stressed and you're anxious and you feel it physically, it's probably enough that it's impacting your blood sugar negatively. So I would say sleep and stress are massive. Red light therapy is great. It's just more so not even an access thing. It's just if people even know it exists, because I think it's not at the forefront.
Does that help with blood sugar?
I haven't personally done it. I'm really am intrigued. I have a couple patients that have, and they love it and swear by it, and their blood sugars are really good. So it makes me wonder if it does help, but I've never personally done it.
Nicole has like every red light device imaginable. She's got a face mask.
He makes fun of me, but he uses it too.
It's true. I do. It's true.
I like a wrap. I have my favorite one is the Loom box. Because it's, I guess there's just different iridescence and like wavelengths. And so from what I've read, and my understanding is that like if it has a higher iridescence and the wavelengths are correct, it's going to like penetrate the cells where is needed, and it's going to help decrease inflammation. And then it's supposed to help with joint pain. So
what about
maybe
blood
it'll help.
sugar?
Blood sugar? I didn't see any research on blood sugar, but maybe it'd help with your hip.
Well, and I was going to say with the hip and also with, pain and these other things, it may indirectly impact blood sugar.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
I would not be mad at all. I may ask some questions about that later. I'm like, I want to know, like, do you have a whole room set up? Like, how does this look? Like, so.
We don't have a sauna, but there are red light saunas.
We are going to get a sauna soon. So what about heat exposure, cold exposure, breathing, things like that? I did this experiment on a patient of mine where I took her blood sugar. I had her do Wim Hof breathing. I don't know if you're familiar with Wim Hof.
I've heard of it, but I don't remember what it is.
Okay. It's like forceful hyperventilating and then breath holding. We did 3 rounds of it. And we took her blood sugar again, and it dropped by like 10 points.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was an N of 1, but
still something though.
Yeah.
I mean, that I have not had anybody do. I've done it before, not knowing what it was called. and I didn't notice anything blood sugar wise, but it
Okay.
was part of I do a lot of like, hypnotherapy mindset stuff. So to me, it's fascinating. And it was part of the whatever we were doing that day. But beyond that cold and heat exposure, I will say I don't think they're necessarily like, oh my God, they're gonna for sure move the needle. I tell people when seasons change, absolutely can impact your blood sugar. Like when it does
Mhm.
get colder, you can become more resistant, but a lot of that's
Mhm.
tied to, are you moving less? Are you, not going outside as much? That type of deal, you're easier access to food. However, if you're just hanging out outside, it can increase the resistance a little, but once you start moving, your body's working harder to keep yourself warm. That can lead to you dropping faster. So that I've noticed. But if it's like cold plunges, I know a couple of people with type 1 who do cold plunges all the time, and I don't know a whole lot in terms of what it does. Showers, though, lower people's blood sugars a lot.
Cold showers or
Not
just any?
everybody. Cold plunges, I don't know. I'd have to
Sorry,
ask them.
cold showers or just regular any type of shower?
Regular, like the hot shower, I'll see their graph and it'll just like drop and then it'll come back. But some people have legit lows or they're symptomatic. And I used to think, oh, is it just the CGM overheated and it's an error? But I don't think it is. I think some people legitimately drop from showers, which is wild, from a
Huh.
hot shower.
I wonder if it's
So,
just like their stress goes down,
Yeah.
cortisol lowers. Like
And
they just like aren't doing anything else. So their body actually like kind of goes into a more restorative state.
it very well could. The other thing I can think of with heat is obviously, as if someone's on insulin or using one of these medications, it's a chemical reaction. And so heat's going to speed it up.
That makes sense.
So if heat speeds up a chemical reaction, it could lead them to dropping a little bit. So that's another thing that could possibly be a hypothesis, but I don't have any like hard data.
Makes sense.
Okay. Supplements. Are there, do you want to talk about anything before
Oh, no,
supplements?
I was going to say, I want to jump into supplements.
Are there any supplements that are effective for managing blood sugar?
That's a good question. There's some that like the research will say, oh, this might help. This could be good. And then it's a matter of if you actually see it or not. To me, I mean, from a blood sugar only standpoint, because I also look at it, holistically, right? I'm like, are there eye supplements you can take that might decrease your risk of, if there's bleeds or something, fixing those. But the biggest thing I would say I usually have people consider is vitamin D,
Mm.
because there is a lot of research showing that a lot of people with diabetes have a lower level of vitamin D. Also, then vitamin D, of course, has ties to immunity, and then lower vitamin D, those people have higher A1Cs. So typically, that's the first line of defense that I think is really important for people. I think zinc in general, diabetes or not, is huge from an immunity standpoint, and
Zinc,
I
you
think
said?
everyone should be
Okay.
taking zinc every day. But that's just me. It's like 25 to 30 milligrams. Those are like the two that I'm like, yes, do this. Beyond that, it's kind of a, person specific thing. If you look at the data, like for BCAAs, which I know everyone's like, oh, BCAAs, LOL. But, some of them show it being great. Some of them show it being terrible. So I'm kind of like, eh. Magnesium can be helpful. I'm trying to think. The one I'm most interested in that doesn't have a ton of data behind it are all of the different like mushroom supplements. Not like,
Mm.
the fun psychedelic mushrooms, and I'd say that jokingly, but like the what is it? The reishi, the
Reishi,
king
lion's
trumpet,
mane.
cordyceps, all that stuff. Yeah, lion's mane.
Yeah.
That has some interesting stuff coming out in terms of potentially helping blood sugars, especially in type 2.
Mm.
But I don't have enough experience with people actually taking it. The couple people I've had on type 1 or with type 1 who have taken it, they seem to have great blood sugars with them.
What
So
about berberine? Have you ever utilized
for
berberine?
for type 2s, I haven't personally taken
Hmm.
berberine. Some of the
Hmm.
type 2s love berberine.
Hmm.
That one, I think it has utility. I think some people may over rely on it and people are like, oh, it's nature's, version of metformin, and it can be. But I think some people over rely, and of course, the source matters. The
Hmm.
other one that I think is useful potentially is ashwagandha. But I feel like that one is kind of a catch-all
Ashwagandha
because
forever.
literally, that was good. I like that. Good vision.
Every time Nicole
But
says ashwagandha, I say that. So
I might steal that now.
you
My
should.
wife's gonna be like, "What are you talking about?" Because she doesn't know the movie.
She doesn't know
So
Black Panther.
Oh,
yeah, she doesn't
man.
know it. No.
Have you seen Black Panther?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Okay.
Also, that came out
Um,
back in the day.
what?
But yeah, ashwagandha does. I mean, it does like literally everything. But that's the one I would say, because if it chills you out too, that'll indirectly help the blood sugar. But it's been shown that it will improve blood sugars in type 2s.
And then what about cinnamon? Like I've heard, just like sprinkling cinnamon in your coffee, different things like that. Like, do you recommend that people add more cinnamon to their diets or not necessarily?
No, if you like
No.
it, eat it, but it's not going to
Yeah.
do any like world breaking stuff. I did try
Okay.
that one for fun back in the day just to see it didn't, it just tasted good. Like my burps
Yeah.
tasted, that was it. So, but yeah, there's nothing like, holy cow, this is the greatest thing ever that
Hmm.
I've found in terms of like everyone with diabetes should take this. There's stuff
Hmm.
that I might say, hey, this is consider adding this to your arsenal. And I'll post sometimes on social, like, is vitamin E worth it? I'll go way out and do like, is stinging nettle worth it? Like, because there's people that talk about these things and some of them are worth it. Some of them are just like, it could be helpful, but there's not enough data for it. And with the diabetes world, it's usually type 2 with the studies because there's a bigger population to pull from.
That makes sense. So what supplements do you personally take?
So I take ashwagandha, I take magnesium, I take the zinc, I take the vitamin D, I take this eye complex thing just because, like I mentioned, like eyes are so important for diabetes and anything that can help. I'm obviously gonna try to, do that. I'm
Totally.
trying to think of anything else. Um, I mean, I don't count protein powder as a supplement. Collagen's the other one. That's the other one that people should take because people with diabetes make less collagen, and people with type 1, doesn't even matter if you're well controlled, you make like 40% less and your skin's drier.
Mm.
So that can be a big thing from connective tissue, skin, all that stuff. So that's the other one. I knew there was one more that was big, but that would be the other big one. I mean, I sometimes will take glutamine just because I have it and I'm like, I should use it. But you know what I mean? Like the rest of them are kind of like if someone sends it to me or like I happen to just have it, I'll be like, oh, I'll take this. This will be cool. But there's nothing that I'm like, holy cow, this is the greatest thing since, forever.
That's super helpful.
Yeah.
What are your current like training goals? What are you trying to do? You know,
Me
body comp.
personally,
Yeah.
I mean, you guys will appreciate this. I want to be able to move better. You'd laugh if I showed you my external rotation. You'd be like, dude, like, no, it's very bad. Like, again, I don't know if it's diabetes related. I think there's a lot of incidents of frozen shoulder and diabetes for both
Yeah.
type 1 and type 2. So
That's one of the first things I ask people who think they have frozen shoulders. Do you have type 2 diabetes or do you have diabetes? Because it's so connected.
that scares the bejeebers out of me. So that makes me want to get better with, mobility. But I would say, thoracic mobility, hip mobility, external rotation, internal rotation. Like I'd go to PT literally every week. I also, like going, so I'm that weirdo that enjoys it. But at the same time, that would be my biggest thing. Of course, maintaining strength and being able to move and be an athlete. But there's nothing like, oh, I'm training for this crazy lift or I'm training for, a show, or I feel like that's either behind me or at least it's behind me for right now.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked, I was going to ask what you eat in a day. And I thought it'd be good to caveat that with what you're training for. So I'm
Sounds like
curious.
life.
Yeah, life.
Life,
So,
yeah.
so somebody who's fit, lean, strong, has type 1 diabetes, what do you eat in a normal day other than the occasional milkshake?
I mean, well, and for me, it's typically breakfast and lunch are very similar. And then because I do the intermittent fasting, my lunch is probably more like a snack to most people. But I mean, I'll do a bunch of eggs and egg whites with, fill in the blank green veggie of the week. And then, mushrooms or peppers or something else. I'll have, was it protein powder, peanut butter, and Greek yogurt combined is an amazing combination. So I do that very often.
I've never
And
tried the peanut butter in there. That sounds good
peanut
though.
butter in there is phenomenal. I used
Okay.
to do it back when I was on the keto days. It would be the heavy cream with the peanut butter and the protein powder. My
Dang.
God, it's like a candy bar. It's amazing. So it turned into Greek yogurt. But I do have to admit, like I love chips. I do eat chips. I try to get the avocado oil ones, but like they're also, great source of potassium and they make me happy. So I like those. Which again,
Live your truth, Ben.
that's what I'm saying. Like, and then I mean, I'll do like, a wrap, one of the high fiber wraps with chicken, cheese, usually nuts or, some sort of fruit as like my midday snack. And then dinner, it really just depends. Like if we go out to dinner, all bets are off. But if we don't go out to dinner, because we only go like once a week or so, I'll do, fill in the blank protein of choice, fill in the blank, between cauliflower, broccoli, large quantity of veggie. And then it really just depends at that point of what else I'm feeling. We have these great, I don't know if y'all have had them, the skinny dip peanut butter cups. Have you had
No.
those?
I
They're these
good.
like lower carb, they're dark chocolate. I won't eat Reese's anymore. Like it's completely ruined me. But like they're like I think 5 grams of carbs each. They're like
Dang.
normal size. They taste amazing and they barely do anything to my blood sugar. I'm like, I'll eat like 5 of those a day. I don't care. Like they're so good.
That's
They're
awesome.
so good. But yeah, I mean, as you see, like I probably eat relatively clean by most people's standards, but
Yeah.
when I go out to eat, when we go out once a week, I do not, I just let it all
Yeah.
out. I don't care. And
We
I
do the
don't even
same
eat that
thing.
big thing.
We do the same thing when we go
But
out.
I would say I think the difference is like you go out once a week for one meal, out of all
Right.
the meals that you eat in a week. So it's just not a super common occurrence. Whereas like we'll have people come in and it's like they eat every
Every day.
meal,
Yeah,
every
yeah.
single meal, breakfast,
Oh
lunch,
yeah.
dinner. Like they get Starbucks, they get a Starbucks breakfast sandwich and 2 sugary Starbucks drinks. And then
Two?
yeah. Then they're snacking throughout the day on things around the office and they have candy and all the things the sweet baked goods that their coworkers bring in, and then for lunch they have pizza or crappy takeout that that is catered for lunch, and then again they're probably their blood sugar drops in the afternoon because they've only had only like crappy processed carbs and sugar. They haven't had much protein in the day, so in the afternoon then they have then they're hungry again, and so they're like, well, what do I eat? And then they get to dinner and they're like, oh, I'm so tired because again, my blood sugar has probably, gone up and down too many times throughout the day. And then they just grab something like, Chick-fil-A or McDonald's on the way home from work because they're too tired. And so I think that's very different, for you going out and eating one meal versus every single day is only eating out.
Well, and to caveat that point too, like I will still, when we go out to eat, like I will still hit all my targets for the day. Like I'll front load, some of the protein. I'll still get a ton of protein. I'll still get veggies. Like I'm still adhering to the principles I mentioned way early on, but then I might add, oh, I want this crazy pasta or I want this bread pudding or, whatever it might be, knowing that I'm going to have to pay attention to the fat hitting my blood sugar later. And I'm going to have to still carb count it. Like I can't just eat it just because, oh, it's once a week. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as I do that, like the work's been put in, it's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like you have to live what you preach, and I try to really do that.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I want to end by just asking a little bit about what you do coaching wise, how you work, what you do with people, and then where people can follow you.
Yeah. So my team and I were all dietitians. We all have type 1 ourselves, which is wild. And we all have exercise backgrounds of some capacity, whether they're certified, whether we have some that are, just high level athletes still competing in things. So with that, we like to joke that we have the personal and the professional background, but we're working on people with having the great blood sugars, enjoying food, losing weight, getting stronger, pretty much just doing what you want when you want to with the people you want to do it with, and not having diabetes be this thing that's constantly on the forefront of your brain. So for people that are interested in, getting support on that, the website would be yourdiabetesinsider.com.
We'll
And then
put
for
that in the
social
show notes
media,
for sure.
yeah, so that one I feel like it tells a little about us, all of course the typical thing. But for social media, for just more about the messaging, etc. I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Man of Zeal, MANOFTZEEL, and I'm torn on changing it to just at Your Diabetes Insider to make it easier. So I might do
Nah,
it. I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
I think that the social should be your personally.
I've been torn because I'm like I want to keep everything congruent, but I'm like, do I change it? Do I not? So I just figured I'd throw them both out there in case someone's like, well, maybe he changed it since by the time it comes out or something.
Okay.
So
Okay. That's fair.
just in case.
And then you also have a podcast, right?
I do actually have
Yeah.
the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, which is a lot of fun. Talk a lot about diabetes, random things, life things. So I feel like we'd have a fun episode if we talked about frozen shoulder. I've never done that. I
I
don't
would be
know.
happy. That'd be an interesting subject. Yeah,
But I
I'd be
know
happy to do
enough to
that.
talk about it. So I'm like, it was on my brain. I'm like, at some point I'll find someone. I'm like, this would be a good one for y'all to talk about. So that could be
Definitely.
fun.
That could be really fun.
Last question to close us off. If you had to make one swap, like a grocery store swap or something that you would just tell anyone that has diabetes, like you should swap this for this, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a real, and we're talking food specifically, or it could
Yeah,
be
food
anything.
specific. Like if they're like, oh, this is what I normally eat in a week. And you're like, oh, just make this one swap. And I think this will make, a big difference.
I would say if there's a way with, and this is, yeah, I would say, and I'll go on the dairy front. I would say if you're doing dairy, there's already enough potential insulin resistance with dairy as a whole. If you can go from, hey, there's a bunch of fat in this to I can get a little bit less fat, it will make your life a lot easier. So part skim cheeses versus full fat will make life easier from a blood sugar standpoint. Or, hey, I have Greek yogurt with fat, you can get it without, much better.
Interesting.
Super interesting. Well, Ben, thank you so much for being on the Strength for Life podcast today. This is a really fun conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. Appreciate you. Appreciate the work you're doing. for people with diabetes and people that just want to be healthier. Keep doing what you do.
No, I'm grateful. This was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for letting
Yeah.
me hang out.
Awesome.
Of course.